Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your anxiety, fears, and insecurities? If so, welcome to the sisterhood of fellow travelers on the path to reclaiming their self-confidence and happiness. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and assault survivor. I spent the past few decades helping young women like you overcome fear, self-doubt, and trauma to reclaim their joy and self-worth. I cannot wait to share the secrets I learned on my own healing journey and help you restore your inner warrior as I show you the skills and tools you need to save your own broken world. If you're ready to empower your inner warrior to overcome fear, doubt, and anxiety, turn off those distractions and tune in to this episode. Over the past few episodes, we talked about our Exodus journey and departure from an old way of life and thinking. We explored areas in our lives that keep us enslaved to fear, doubt, and anxiety, and thus keep us imprisoned. And we unpacked the importance of putting in the work to heal broken areas in our lives and thinking so we can enter the promised land and thrive there. Today, I'm moving this conversation into living a life of purpose that is fueled by passion. Like I mentioned last episode, the conditions around us will never be perfect or perfectly clear to us. Oftentimes, clarity comes in the midst of things. So waiting on total clarity isn't always the best option. I've broken this topic into a few sessions. This first one introduces the idea of living with purpose and passion and narrows in on the first of three areas that set us up to live and thrive in our purpose. I've been waiting for the chance to share my purpose living stories and experiences with you, and I'm excited that we've finally arrived at this crossroad. If you're ready to begin living the life you dreamed of and thrive with purpose and passion, what follows is for you. In this episode, we'll unpack what it means to seek and live with purpose. We'll gain a better understanding of the three stages that drive or distract our purpose, and we'll hear about my own experiences with thriving in purpose that is fueled by passion and focus. To live with purpose is to have a clear reason for existing. To know our purpose is to know how we're designed and why we function in particular ways to achieve our objectives and those outcomes that we desire. The idea of purpose brings to mind what our objective or intention is in a given situation or time. Did you know that we must be aware of who we are and what we want to accomplish to understand our purpose? That's something we don't often talk about a lot. Is what comes before even being able to understand what our purpose is. A lot of times we just try to figure out what is our purpose? What are we supposed to be doing right now? But we haven't done some of those initial steps first to figure out who exactly are we and what exactly do we want out of this particular moment or season in life. When we begin to explore this idea of living with purpose, we have to ask ourselves, do we even know who we are and what we want in this moment or season? Or are we wandering aimlessly through each day, hoping that inspiration will just hit us over the head and knock our purpose into us? Do we have an aim, a goal, or desired outcome? And I'm not just talking about the sense that you have one in mind. I mean, have you done more work than that? Have we identified and planned out how we expect to accomplish it? And the third thing, have we set some things in place to help ourselves attain our desired goal, aim, or outcome? Beyond this, what is our path to stay on track and focused? So these are those three areas that I'm going to break down over the next few episodes. And today, I'm really going to narrow in on that first one, which is identifying who we are and what are we even trying to do right now? What are we trying to accomplish? As a spiritual person, I'm constantly trying to ground myself and my ideas around my purpose and also center this with what God's reasons are for my existence. What was I created for? And though today's message isn't focused on this, I do find it interesting because it makes me think about that saying, when they say like, oh, I was made for such a time as this, or you were made for such a time as this. And that is an interesting expression because usually when we experience that for ourselves is in those moments where we're thrown into a situation and we know that my purpose is fully functioning here and I feel like I'm thriving. So you get those thoughts like, we're supposed to be right there at that particular time, or we realize as we function in this space that we are instinctively doing certain things and we're actually good at them. We like doing certain things and find joy even in the effort. There will be those instances as well. Or we fit in and thrive doing so by just being our genuine self and doing things that we're good at. So the number one distraction that keeps us from living with purpose is not knowing who we are and what we're after in that moment or that season. And beyond asking ourselves, who am I? There are other things that we also should consider, like what do I want in the near future and the distant future? What do I need to do to achieve this? Which we will again focus on in the next episode, but we have to bring those things to mind as we're trying to sift through this and trying to make meaning of these things that identify us and identify our purpose. So number one, who am I? What do I know about myself and what fulfills me? So this is one of those instances where maybe you need to write some things down, or maybe you just need to get in meditation, but you have to figure out what those things are. While you're meditating on these things, you have to start considering like, what has shaped my identity? What relationships and interactions have helped make me who I am today, for better or worse? What investments have I made into my mental, physical, and spiritual selves? What areas do I hope to grow in? What do I want to be kind of when I grow up in this season of my life? What makes me feel alive, valuable, like living to 100 or more is actually something I desire? So let that kind of sink in for a second. What are those things that make you feel like, oh, I want to live forever in this capacity? I want to live forever in this energy, in this spirit. These are those emotions that are really at the heartbeat of what we call passion. Passion is that motivation and energy that awakens our interest and excitement. Whereas purpose is the vehicle fueled by passion. The higher the octane, the more efficient and powerful the ride. While passion comes out of purpose and they synergize in this really amazing way, it's wise to keep passion actually in our minds and in the forefront here as we identify our purpose and plan out how to fulfill it. So don't think about how you have to come up with the purpose first and then start operating in that purpose, and then the passion will kind of come out of that. These two are really interesting when we start to kind of juxtapose them and put them side by side concurrently at the same time to see what interesting synergies arise out of that. Now, sometimes more of our passion will help us tease out some of our purpose, and acting in some of our purpose will clearly identify and expose areas of passion where we just feel that energy coming from our soul, rising up and coming out of us. And then we know, okay, right? That's definitely my passion coming out of my purpose. Passion concept brings me to the other half of the equation. Number two, what am I after in this moment or season? So sometimes we have to look at things in a near future or right now current situation. And you have to think about like, what am I after right now? Or what am I after in the next step? And then we also have to think about maybe there will be instances where what am I after in the distant future? And those goals are a little bit different and that journey is going to look a little bit different. But we have to ask ourselves those things. And we have to commit those things maybe to the page or somewhere where we can see them in a different space and then start to make interesting connections and identify some things that are at work in our current life and in our current behaviors and our current thinking. So do you even know what you want or want to happen sooner down the road? Make that list. What do I like? What do I want? What do I dislike? What don't I want? So we can get as much out of listing what we don't like and what we don't want. This kind of reminds me of a story that goes back to when I first met my now husband. So when we first met each other and we kind of hit it off right away and started developing this, great relationship and friendship, he used to share this story and he still shares it to this day. He's like the little Cupid. He likes to play matchmaker with people, but he shares this story about making the list. And it's something that his father instilled in him. And years ago, obviously before he met me, he was kind of in this vicious cycle of just like dating for the sake of dating and just waiting for like, I just want a good girl to come along that I can marry and settle down with. And his dad was talking to him one day and he said, "What do you want? Do you even know what you want?" And my husband says, "Well, I just want a nice girl, Dad. I want a nice girl, a good girl that I could settle down with." And his dad's like, "Well, that's the problem. You don't even know what you want. Like, what is a nice girl? Like, you need to be able to identify some things that you want. What are the qualities and the habits and the attributes that you want this future wife of yours to have? Make a list. What are things that you don't want that individual to have? Make those things very present. Figure out what those things are. And then pray about it." And so he was like, "Oh, yeah, whatever. Okay, yeah, make the list and pray about it." And he kind of laughed. And then he did. He sat down and he made a list. And now he tells people that story. And he says, "I had 40 things on my list. And I got every one of them with my wife." And so that's kind of cute that he says that. But it's that thing that he used to tell me in the beginning of our relationship where we were trying to do all kind of things. Not just, obviously, I didn't have time to make a list. I was already in his life. So I laugh and make jokes about how, well, I didn't know about the list, so I could have put things on there that I did want and didn't want in a future partner, but I didn't know that. So lucky you that I didn't get to put those things on a list. But laughing aside, I use that list concept to plan other things in my life. So when I'm thinking about my creative goals or my professional goals and how some of those things intersect, because I am a writer and a poet and an editor and a teacher. And these things intersect in a lot of different ways in my life. Needless to say, I've evolved into this list person. I make lists and I also make vision boards, which is another thing that I learned from my husband when we were first dating. There was a closet in our office that had pocket doors, and he would have all these different things taped, pictures from magazines, notes, lists of itemized bullet list of what he had to do to accomplish this particular goal. And he'd have all these different things taped on to what I consider a vision board. But it was just the front of a closet in our office. And that would change from time to time. He would take pictures down or add different pictures when new goals or new ambitions arose. And we had pictures of even like different motorcycles and a boat. We didn't own a boat at that time, but in the course of our relationship and when we lived at this house, we bought several boats. We bought a smaller boat, then we upgraded, and then we upgraded. And every time he would put bigger pictures of boats on there once we would get one. It was something that would just drive him. Like, all right, I achieved that. So cross it off my list, so to speak. And then he would have bigger dreams. Like, I want a bigger boat one day. And he would put a picture of a boat, and maybe it would be an even bigger boat, like a cruise ship or something. Like, we don't want to own a cruise ship. But he would just be sometimes obnoxious, but like, hey, don't shoot too low. You never know. And so he would put these goals on there. And I love that vision board idea also because I'm a very visual person. And so when I started going back to school to write, one of the things that I had learned was this kind of found poetry collage art, that you take things from different media sources, like magazines and newspapers, for instance, and you cut and you take phrases and you take background images and you kind of create this, almost looks like a magazine cover when you're all done. You've got different phrases you've taken other people's phrases and you've made them into your own kind of found list or found poem. And I do this all the time, create a background. So you find a background that tells its own story and is symbolic in some way. And then you mesh all of these words and phrases together into this new vision, this almost like a vision statement. So I do this all the time, and I paste these into my calendar book. And so I actually do this thing where I put my calendars and these collage found list vision board things into one journal. And I keep all of my calendar, my vision board, my lists, my notes, my writing, all these different things in one planner. And I call it collage calendaring. I teach these programs at the local colleges also because I like to help other people do the same thing because it's creative, but it's also very purpose-driven. It keeps me on board, it keeps me on track, and it keeps me adding to it. And it keeps me coming back and taking things off the list because I've done them, or maybe things change and that's no longer part of the plan. And now here's this new thing that's part of the plan, or I don't know what the plan is now. And I have to come back to the drawing board, so to speak, and figure these things out. So I keep these things all blended in one shared space. And it was life-changing for me. I started doing this about a decade ago and I love it. I love it when I open it up, even when I go back and a book is starting to get full and I have to start a new one, or if I have to go back and find something and I'm like, where the heck was that? What was I doing, thinking? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like, look at all this. You know, that's the other cool thing is you go back and you look at things and you realize I've accomplished all of these things. Like I said I was going to do it. I put it down. I committed to it. I locked in and I'm doing these things and I've accomplished them. So it's really kind of a cool visual to go back and see everything that you've accomplished. And again, that idea of revisiting and revising things will keep things straight and keep you on task. It's also really cool, like I just mentioned, that commitment. It is an accountability tactic, and it's kind of like making a contract with yourself. You know, I talked a couple episodes ago about, things that we say we're going to do here. We're committing to something. It becomes this like contract with yourself. And if you're a spiritual person, you, like I do, believe that what I bind here and make a commitment to here is bound in the spiritual realm also. And this creates a whole different layer and dynamic for keeping yourself accountable to things, but also that it's kind of prophetic and it sets things into motion. And you're stepping into and stepping through these things that you already set into motion by committing to doing them. So before you've even taken the first step in the physical, you've taken the first figurative step in committing to it and identifying what it is you are committing to. So not only are we supposed to identify these things that we want, these goals that we have, we also have to take a little bit of time to identify those distractions. Thinking, actions, people that don't belong, all of these things are things that we need to take under advisement and identify them. Sometimes we can identify them ahead of time, which is always great when we can get ahead of something. But sometimes we identify things as they're happening and they're derailing us, or they're just distracting us, or some things will totally destroy us if we let them. But just remember that a distraction that becomes chronic is just as bad as total destruction. So you might have something or someone who comes into your situation and could just demolish the whole thing, can destroy the whole thing. Or you can just allow something or a person to come in and constantly be a negative pull and a negative distraction. That, what's the difference? If they can keep you off task over and over and over again chronically in a pattern, then you're not moving forward. It's just as effective as total destruction. So that's something you need to keep in mind also. So when it comes to the thinking part, we have to self-reflect. And we have to also catch ourselves. Again, sometimes you're not ahead of something. You might have something that you're working on, like I'm no longer going to allow myself to think this particular way because then it causes me to act or speak a specific way. So yeah, we have those, but then we also have those real-time things where we are thinking in the moment. And then you're like, wow, is this a bad thought? Is this lazy thought? Is this outdated thinking? A lot of times we have thinking that isn't necessarily bad ethically, but maybe it is bad for what we say we want to do. It's not productive thinking. It's outdated. It goes with the old self in the old ways. And we've made a decision that we don't want to be that old self anymore. We don't want to have those old ways that lead to the old behaviors and the old patterns and the old outcomes. So there's that type of thinking that we have to really explore. And then the actions. So most of the time, our actions are a direct result of that thinking. And that actions, we have to ask ourselves, if what we're doing is bringing us a step closer or leading us to what are those aims, what are those goals, what is that end desired outcome that we're after? We always have to ask ourselves if our actions are helping us or leading us away from that thing. And oftentimes, that's the thing. This is all these small actions that we're doing. Now we're not even talking about something or someone getting in the way. We're talking about our own actions. Are our own actions taking us away? It's funny, there's a meme that goes around that talks about writers in the writing community. It says, nobody has a cleaner house than an author who has a deadline or the next chapter to write. And, let that irony kind of sink in. I say that it applies to everything in life. That could be a metaphor for so many other things, or an analogy for so many other things in our life. And so it's like nothing becomes a bigger distraction than the very action you need to do to get the next thing done. So oftentimes we are looking for that distractible action to bring us in this other thing. Oh, I'm just going to do this quick thing. Oh, I guess I need to fold my socks and put them all away, when it's this bigger action that we need to take that might not be so fun or might not be so easy, but we know that we need to take this action. Maybe life is demanding that we take this particular action to keep us on track, or maybe it's just this next step that we need to take, and we're going to kind of put it on hold, and we're going to take this distraction action because we just don't feel like locking into that thing. So you got to be intentional about your actions as well. And then, of course, those people. Now, there will be people who come in and they try to destroy what it is that we're trying to do, or they try to distract us. And, not all of it is maybe intentional, but some of it is, and we have to recognize those types of intentional things. Newsflash, not everybody wants you to succeed. That's kind of sad, but it is a reality. Not everybody wants to feel like you're surpassing them. So there will be people who come in and kind of sabotage or just slow you down. But there will also be people in your life who just need you, or they grow dependent on you. And if you allow that dependence or codependence to fester, it could take over your life, and it could totally distract you from doing all the things that you need to do. So you have to be thinking about, are these people distracting you intentionally or unintentionally? Are they a negative drain? Are they literally bringing negativity in to your life? Are they trying to discourage you from doing those things that you're set out to do? I deal with that a lot as a writer. I can remember when I changed careers. I used to be an architectural engineer major, and everybody was so excited for me. Oh my gosh, you're going to be so rich. That was the first thing everybody said. Didn't matter how good I was at it, what I could do with that career. It was all down to like what kind of paycheck I could eventually get. Even the advisor who talked me out of originally getting a degree in English and in writing was saying the same things. You're going to be a fabulous minority. You're going to have all these opportunities for great jobs and great income streams and all these different things. And then when I went back to school and said, oh, I'm going back to be a writer, everybody was like, you're not going to make any money with that. And I was like, I'm on the long-term path. I don't have to have all these things figured out, but I definitely know after years being out of college while I was raising my kids when they were small, I knew where my passion and my purpose were thriving when it came to content creation and writing and editing and all those different things. I knew. So when I went back to school to formally train in those areas, I just knew, I knew that was where I was supposed to be. And it might not be the easy road. It might have some difficulties. It might take me longer to maybe get the same types of successes, or to be able to have successes that are measurable the same way that we do with other more traditional routes. I was like, I'm going to make peace with that, because I have to have faith that I'm doing the right things for all the right reasons. Because I could have taken that route, and there is no way of knowing for sure where that would have taken me. But I would bet that it may have burned me out, and then I would be right here, right now, reinventing myself. Or maybe reinventing myself a decade ago. I would have been at a crossroad where I would have said, I have no more energy because I'm not operating in my full purpose. Or maybe I fulfilled that purpose now, and I have a larger purpose or a higher calling right now that I need to focus on. I'm grateful that I at least had enough confidence and knew my worth when all of this negative speaking was going on against what I was working toward, because looking forward, I can't imagine not being right here, right now, talking to you if I hadn't put in all that work. And if I hadn't allowed my journey to take me down all these different interesting paths that led me here. I can't imagine my life. I wake up in the morning now, and I can't imagine not having any of those things to look back on to say, wow, look at how that led me here and how this led me to this and led to this and how these things all came together that I needed to lead me on that next leg. And if I hadn't removed some of these individuals, I had to remove out of my life because they became really negative. And, you have to make those tough decisions. But it's not just people sometimes. You have to remove these distractions. And once you remove them, you'll start to notice yourself thrive in different ways. But sometimes we can't remove people or we can't remove situations entirely. So that's when we just have to figure out how to limit our interactions with these individuals or situations, or how to limit their access to us. So sometimes before I sit down and record an episode, I kind of do a practice run with my husband. Often it's not intentional. It just seems to be like the topics that I'm talking to you about are topics that we're talking about with each other, or topics that I'm trying to encourage him in. So an area in his current life is that he is at a crossroads where there's a big chapter of his professional career that's closing, and he is not doing some of the work that he needs to do to reimagine his purpose. And, I was talking to him about that this morning and just saying, you've got to sit down and do all these things that you've encouraged me to do over the years, which is really self-reflect. Think about who you are in this season and think about who you want to be. So I cracked the joke earlier about who do you want to be when you grow up, but aren't we always growing up into a different version of ourselves? And don't we want that different version to be a better version of ourselves, even if as we get older, that better version isn't necessarily like a younger version. So sometimes when we think about becoming a better version of ourselves, we think about like being the most physically fit, for instance, that we can be, and maybe being the most mentally sharp, or being the most financially successful in our careers. And as we get older, maybe our physical abilities decline a little bit. We can't do in our 40s, 50s, 60s what we could do in our teens, in our 20s, in our 30s. And, sometimes our mind might not be dulling in the sense that as we get older, sometimes we retain information differently. We have the wisdom and the experience to know what to do with that new information, but our memory starts to go. So now we have to figure out, what to do with this weakening memory that we have. And, so when we think about maybe as we age or as we enter different seasons of our life, we're just not able to do the same things, maybe with the same endurance or the same energy, but we want to think about what fulfills us. What kind of perseverance can we bring to this new game? We have to really invent the new game sometimes. And that's where he's at right now in the conversation that I was having with him, is you need to figure out what direction you want to take things now, and what are you going to focus on? So you've got to really narrow in your focus, and then you've got to lock in. And before you can do that, you've got to really figure, what is my purpose? And what do I like? What don't I like? And we also have to think about, a couple episodes ago, I talked about purpose. To fulfill a purpose is to be in the service of others, which is a really interesting thing. So if you think about like an object has a purpose, it fulfills a purpose, it's useful in some way. So somebody uses something in a particular way. So it serves a purpose in the service of someone else. So like your favorite coffee mug, for instance, holds coffee that you can drink in every day. And it has a purpose. It fulfills its purpose. If it has a crack in it, it cannot fulfill its purpose the same way. You can try to glue it back together. It may not have its purpose the same way. It's certainly not going to be able to hold up forever in that state. So when we think about purpose in that setting, it makes me think about impact. What kind of impact are we going to have in our lives when we reconsider our purpose, or we find our purpose for the first time, and we start to thrive in that, and we allow our passion to come in, and that's what drives the energy. So today, after I had this whole conversation with my husband, and he was like, I know, I need to do some of these things, and thank you for taking the time to kind of help inspire me again. He saw me running around doing some stuff that I had to get done before I sat down to record the podcast. And he was like, I am so jealous of your energy. And I was like, well, I'm not asking you to have my same energy. I know you can't match my same energy. That's not your talent. That's not your super skill. And, we laughed about it and stuff. But I was like, but you can match my energy in different ways and offset them in ways that I can't do things. I don't even have that skill set, or I don't have that ability. And, he walked away, and I was still kind of thinking about it. And I was thinking about this podcast and thinking about how passion is that place where our energy really comes. It's like this furnace with these hot coals in it. And when you start to stir those hot coals, the fire burns stronger and it keeps everybody around you warmer. And if those coals are cooking food or running a furnace, just think about how that functions. How its impact is the hotter those coals are working, the better the heat's going to come out of that furnace. That impact, that ultimate impact is going to be stronger. And so when we think about how can we thrive in this purpose, and people start to recognize that enthusiasm that comes, that's a super powerful driving force. So when people say, how do you do some of those hard things that you do that, are simple in concept, but they're not necessarily easy to execute, and you seem so enthusiastic about it, it's when we can drill down into that passion and stir the coals of that. That's where that enthusiasm comes from, and that energy to do things that we don't want to do. Yesterday, one of the things I did was I started radically decluttering this office space because I want to do some different things with this studio, not just the recording of the podcast, but I want to reclaim this space in my home that I can shut the door on the rest of the house. And I have decades of old files that I needed to go through that, because the filing cabinet system was full, we had a lot of stuff out. So we have a lot of files and a lot of boxes and a lot of supplies that go in our office that need to be put away, that can't be put away properly because I needed to clean out some of these other spaces. And so I've been going through and also getting excited about why I'm doing this thing. It sucks to clean this stuff out. It's awful. And you're going through all of this old paperwork. Do I need it, or can it be forever burned? Because you don't want to burn something that you're going to be like, oh my God, I needed that. And you don't know sometimes if you need something until you need it. But I'm like, okay, this is 21 years old. I'm pretty sure I don't need this. So I had to go through all of these things, and it was just awful. It was exhausting. It wasn't fun. But I also had podcasts and music going in the background to kind of also keep me motivated and keep me fueled. So I was trying to also encourage myself in different areas, and listening to that music and listening to a really great podcast really helped give me the direction. So maybe the cleaning up is that one step that I needed to do here. I hate cleaning. I know I'm speaking to a lot of you. You probably hate cleaning too. That's okay, because that's a step that I had to take, an uncomfortable and unfun step that I had to take in order to get myself one closer to some of these goals and these desires that I have in this new direction that I'm taking my life, and I'm taking my creative career, and I'm taking my professional career. So I had to do it. And there's beauty in that, and there's energy in that, and there's such an accomplishment. Like, I'm not going to show you this space yet, but when I look around, I'm sitting, and there's countertops and desktops that are just completely clear, that haven't been clear, and I don't remember when. So there's that accomplishment also when you step back and you see the fruits of your labor, and you're like, oh my gosh, all that work didn't just pay off for helping me get steps closer to that end goal. It's helping me right now, because now I have this space in my home that I was a little bit embarrassed about. I would shut the door when people came over. And again, it's not 100% done, but I'm not going to shut that door. I feel a sense of pride in being able to say, this isn't an embarrassing spot in my home anymore. And imagine when it's even completed. So now maybe I'm speaking to you also on this regard to say that sometimes we need to clean some things up so that we can see the space again, and we can get excited about the space and what happens in this space. And if you're a visual person,
and you get overwhelmed by some of that stuff, which was happening to me. I would come in here to get something and run back out because I would get so overwhelmed. And it's the office. It's the space I'm supposed to be able to spend most of my time in. And I wasn't spending any time in here because I was like, get in and get out. And now I'm in here and I'm just like, wow, that's right. This is a great space that I originally designed to be a great space. And to be a space where not only great things happened, but I felt great inhabiting the space. And so, maybe you'll be encouraged by that. I'm hoping that you find encouragement with me sharing that with you, because it can be a literal and a figurative reminder about the importance of not only doing all of these things to prepare, is also sometimes there will be steps that we have to take in between this spot and that spot that we need to be in or we want to be in. And there will be a few steps and a few things that we have to do along the way that aren't necessarily fun, or we feel like we're full of passion, or we feel like our purpose is operating in that sense, but that's okay. Because again, we should be fueled by the fact that it's leading us one step closer to what we want and what we desire. So if you aren't currently practicing an effective way of keeping yourself on track, I highly recommend this first step of just listing things out and meditating on what it is that you want and identifying some of those things. And next time that we get together, we'll talk a little bit more about some of these steps that you can take. But as we part ways for the week, I invite you to specifically meditate on who you are and identify some of those things that you are after now and in the future. Write these things down and commit to taking the next step, which we'll explore next episode. This being, what is our aim, our goal, our desired outcomes? Trust me when I say it's impossible to avoid distraction for this second step if we haven't figured out what we are and what we want to accomplish. So stay focused while you find your focus. And may your discovery journey this week fill you with the kind of hope that ignites that passion and brings that purpose into focus. Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to follow my channel and share it with girlfriends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. If you haven't already, consider joining my Facebook group of women just like you, the Restore Your Inner Warrior Sisterhood. Here's a safe space to get tips, share stories, and find community support. And if this podcast inspired you, consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. As you go through your day, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Saturday. Ciao.